All right, so thanks for attending today. I'm Josh Osborne, and I'm the product manager for the CI tools here at Central Innovation. And today is just going to be a sort of a general CI tools session. So I'm not sure if any of you attended last week, but the idea with these is that we're just going to go through areas that either people have asked us to show them how they work or to go over in a bit more detail in video form. To cover questions that have come in during the week or anything like that, and just sort of generally show things that we think people either don't know about or we're getting a lot of support questions about. So we think that either they're difficult to understand or we just haven't explained them well in some other format yet. And so today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be looking a little bit at our cabinets tool. And just one of the things that we've been getting quite a lot of queries about recently is how to just draw a fairly standard cabinet and set it up with a benchtop and a sink and that sort of thing, the way that you sort of would most of the time when you're making up a cabinet. So I'm going to go through and do that. And then once we've made up a standard cabinet, I'll go through and show you a little bit of how you can customize that cabinet and do different things with modules and that sort of thing. So hopefully that will be useful to you guys. And if we have time at the end, I might also just very quickly show you the slab edges tool, which is one, it's not particularly difficult to use or anything. It's just one that I think quite a lot of people don't know that it exists. It's part of our objective tool. And so I might quickly go on to that if we have time at the end. If you do have any questions during the session, just enter them into the questions panel. And once I get to the end, I will go through those questions and have a look through. And if there's any that I can answer live online, I'll do those then. And if there aren't any like that, then I'll follow up with you via email after the session is finished. The other thing is I'm going to be using ArchiCAD 24 today. The cabinets tool, which is largely what we're going to be looking at, was overhauled pretty much from scratch in ArchiCAD 23. So if you're using 23 or 24, everything that you see here will apply to what you have already. If you're using 22 or earlier though, or if you're using 23 or 24 and you're using the legacy object, this won't apply to you. Your cabinets, the old cabinets tool is very, very different to this. So anyone on 23 and 24, this is how it will work for you guys. And final thing is, yes, there will be a recording of the session and that'll be available on my CI in about a week's time once I edit out me saying all the time and that sort of thing. So, and as we're going through, the other thing is if you think of anything else that you would like covered, even if it doesn't seem like it fits in with what we're doing today or anything like that, send that through to the questions panel as well, because that list of things that people ask about will be the things that I use in following weeks. This session will be happening at this time or an hour before now, every Thursday afternoon, basically from now till I'm dead. So if you send through any questions about things that you want covered in these, I will use that list of things as the future topics. So if you do think of anything, enter those as we go. But that's enough of that. Let's get into the cabinets tool. So as I mentioned before, the cabinets tool was remade pretty much from scratch in ArchiCAD 23. It's available to select customers in Australia, and it's available to all New Zealand customers. So pretty much anyone watching this should have it. If you are not in Australia or New Zealand, you can also get a trial version of it just from our website, MyCI. So you can try that out for 30 days if you want to as well. And if you have any questions about purchasing it, you can fire those through and I can help you with those. But what the cabinets tool does is it goes into the toolbox as a separate tool. It's this one here, which you can see my cursor over. It's a nice little cabinet there. And when you first install the tool, this won't go in all by itself. You need to add it in. And the easiest way of doing that is by using our work environment. So in the CI Tools installer, you will have noticed one of the options was the CI Tools work environment. And if you install that, it will install this thing called CI Tools Profile 24. Just apply that and the cabinet tool will appear in your toolbox here. And that's how you get started. So select the cabinets tool and go into the settings as you would with any tool. And the first thing you'll see on the left here is the list of parts of the cabinet tool that there are available. So you can see at the moment it's defaulting to CI Cabinet Polygon. This will depend on what you last used in your project. So you might get a different object here by default. But what I'm going to go with for now is this one just here called CI Cabinet. If you are used to the old tool still and you haven't gotten onto using the new one yet, or you don't want to just yet, if you go to this migration library at the top, that will show you the old library parts. So if you want to keep going with the way you used to use cabinets, you can always come back in here and just grab one of those. You don't have to use the new ones if you don't want to. But I'm going to go with CI Cabinet, and that's essentially the replacement for the old cabinet object. And we'll cover a couple of the other objects after we've looked at this one. So you can see when I've got it selected, it's drawn up a fairly standard looking rectangular cabinet here. And you can see the default page here is some settings about how the cabinet itself should be configured. So we've got some settings here about the dimensions of it, how we want the face frame to be set up, how the plinth should be attached, and some surface settings as well. And for quite a lot of cases, if you're just trying to draw up some basic placeholder cabinets, this is probably all the settings you need to look at. So let's do that. Let's just have a quick look over these settings. We've got frameless, inset, half or full overlay. I'll leave that as frameless. The plinth options, let me choose if I want to have legs or little bits of walls or nothing. And the carcass settings just do exactly what you'd imagine those dimensions do, matching up the diagram. And the paints, I'll leave them how they are as well. So I'm just going to hit OK with the default settings, and then I'm going to place it down. So you can see it's placed a cabinet that looks pretty much exactly how you'd expect that 3D representation to look. It's defaulting to 860 high, and it's 600 by 560. So what I'm going to do first of all is I want to make this cabinet a bit wider. So I'm just going to select one of the corners and drag it out to the size that I want. Now you can drag this to whatever you want. Just for example, if I drag it all the way out here, you can see that it is repeating the units there to fill in the amount of space that I've given it. So I've resized it to the arbitrary number of 2412, and you can see it's made up to 4 what we call modules in there now. And that is happening because if I go back into my settings, oh goodness, I've forgotten where I put that setting. I'll come back to that. It was because the width of the cabinet is set to 600, and the object defaults to have repeating units, and so that's why it's done that. We'll come back to that later on. But for now, this is wider than I want it to be. You can make it as wide as you want, and it'll just keep repeating those as long as you want to. But I'm going to bring it back and make it about 1,000 or so. So let's just go up to the size panel here, and I'll just type in 1,000 because we're just going to make a fairly standard size cabinet. So it's 1,000 wide by 860 high, which is what I want to go with for now. Hopefully the default settings will give you something that most of the time that you want. The height of 860 and the width of 600 is probably fairly standard, but if you do have any feedback about what you'd like the defaults to be, please do let us know about that, because that's very useful information for us. So you can see while we're in here at the moment, we've got our 2 modules here, and one of them was 600 because that's the default width, and it's fit in a second one in the remaining space, so that'll be 400 wide. But you can see we've got some hotspots sitting here, and we can actually click on those and drag them around to change the way that that structure works. So you can see I just adjusted the offset there, so I have a big gap in my cabinet now. The same happens with the other side hotspot. And then this purple hotspot up here, which is in the center, will adjust where that actual partition is. So I can move this out to make the original one larger and the one to the side smaller, and vice versa. So you can drag and drop them to whatever sizes you want. And as you're doing that, you can also enter the value that you want specifically here. So I'm just going to go 600 here and set it back to what it was by default. So we've set our cabinet, it's 1,000 wide, and we've got a 600 on one side and a 400 on the other, which is what I want in this case. And so let's just have a look at it in 3D before we go any further. So pop out to the 3D window, and you can see that it has done what I wanted it to. They're both defaulted to have doors on the front, which is fine for now. And you can see the legs here. And why is that slab too dark? I'm just going to delete that so we can see properly underneath. You can see the legs there and the plinth in front. So the next thing I'm going to do is on this left-hand side here, I'm going to put a sink in there. And on the right, I'm going to chop this into 3 so that we have 3, let's just say 3 modules for now. We'll figure out what we want to put in them later. So you'll probably notice I'm saying the word modules a lot. It makes sense to me in this, but it may not to everyone else. So when we say a module, what we mean is a sort of a thing that goes into a certain part of the carcass. So in this case, we have 2 modules currently, and they're both opening door modules. So it's just the sort of a drawer is a module, or a set of drawers is a module, a inbuilt oven is a module, an open shelf is a module, all that sort of thing. It's the sort of the contents in there. So when I say module, what I mean is just this sort of movable, adjustable inner piece. So at the moment we've got 2 of those, and I'm going to split this one up here into 3 instead of just 1, and I'm going to keep this one on the left how it is. So this is where the graphic editing comes in. So at the moment you can see I have my cabinet selected, and one of the things that you might know if you've used our cabinet tool is that it is graphically editable in all of your views. So I'm going to go to my grids and editing option here, and I'm just going to turn on my edit palette. Now, if you're working with these a lot, you might want to turn on the auto display on editing thing, which will turn on the palette automatically when you try to change something. But I've got it turned off for now, just so that it only shows when I specifically want it to. I'm just going to turn this to none for now, but I'll cover that later. So now that I've done that, you can see it's turned my cabinet into a sort of a wireframe display. It's showing the partition because at the moment what we're editing is the inside of the cabinet. And so the thing that we care about is the partitions more than the outside. So it's just representing those with lines, but we can see our partition on the inside. And this here is my editing palette, which you can see it's actually a element in 3D space. So it can end up going through the floor and odd things like that as you're working with it, but you should always be able to see all of the elements and grab the nodes off them. And the way that these work is that you pick a purple node for whichever thing you want to do, and then you move it and click it into place. And you can see there's a variety of different things that we can do. The top level are the partitions, the second level are the inner parts of partitions, and the bottom level are dividers and shelves. So I'm going to go with some top level partitions because I want to make this one module here into 3 modules. So I'm going to break it up into 3. So I'm going to choose this option here, which is the horizontal partition. And as soon as I do that, you'll start to see a little preview here of the partition that's going to go in. You can see the dotted line outline that it's drawing there as I move around. I'm going to come over to this right-hand module, and I'm going to click to place it. So I now have one horizontal module, and now I'm going to click again on this node plus icon and drag it up here so that we now have 2 modules. And that's exactly what I wanted. So I now have my one big module on the left, the 600 wide one, and the 400 wide side now has 2 horizontal partitions in it to make it into 3, which is what I wanted. So the next part that you probably will want to do is make these actually accurately placed rather than just clicked and dragged by eyeball like I did just now. And so the way that you can do that is by selecting one of the nodes. Oops, that's the wrong node. Keep clicking the wrong node. Sorry about that. Okay, and you can see as I move this, the tracker is bringing up this value partition X and partition Z. The partition X value at the moment is not going to do anything because I am creating a subdivision inside inside an existing module. So there's nothing for X to do. It wouldn't make sense because it always has to take up the full size of the place that it's partitioning, but the partition Z is the height of this module. And so at the moment, the partition Z for the bottom shelf is 270. And I would say that the top one looks like it's about looks like it's about 500, but I want it to be exactly 500. There we go. Sorry, I keep on clicking on the wrong node here. My mouse is still acting a bit funny. It's at 520 at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up the, what do we call it? The tracker dimension editing thing. And I'm going to set the partition Z to 500. Click the tick. And I'll move that down to 500. And then I'm going to grab this one. And I'm going to set its partition Z to 250. Okay, so now we have it broken up into the partitions that I wanted, and it is using the actual values that I wanted rather than just me eyeballing where they should go. And now that we've made the cuts that we want to make, we can turn off this edit palette. So to do that, just grab the hotspot from the edit part and move it up to the hide the palette part, and that will make the palette go away. And it will turn the cabinet back into its full display mode. So you can see now it's broken up into 3. They all just have doors on them at the moment, which is essentially, it's just using the default settings for those modules. And now we can go and do something with those. So I'll select my cabinet and go into the settings, and we can have a look at how the modules work now. So moving out of the configuration tab that we started with, we're going to go to the modules section here. And you can see that it shows a representation of the layout of these modules. So we've got our big 600 on this side and our 3 smaller 400s on the other side. And at the moment, you can see that we have 3 different selections over here. We've got the type, the front, and the handle. So for this big front one, I'm going to leave that as a door left. That's what I want that to be. I'm going to click on the top right one. And I'm going to make that one, just an open area. So you can see as soon as I do that, it turns into what I said. Select the middle one, and I'll make that, I'm going to make that a drawer stack. And then for the bottom one, I will make it, let's say, a bin. No, that's far too big to fit in that space. I should have thought of that. Let's just make it a drawer. Okay, so you can see that it's made those changes there. And we have plenty of options for what else you might want to do for the type here. At the moment, it's drawer, obviously, but if I click here, you can see the settings of specifically what I have. So if I go to my drawer setting, you can see that it is called drawer. Its label will be DR. The function is that it is a single drawer, and the surfaces and dimensions are set as those are there. And if I go through and change any of these settings here, any module that I have set to drawer will reflect those changes. If you want to have multiple different types of drawers, you can just make multiple types here using the plus button to create a new drawer type. So you could set up multiple different surfaces for your drawers, say, or something like that. So this is the single drawer setting. I'm just going to have a look at the drawer stack setting because I have one of those put in there, but it, I would imagine, is trying to fit in too much. And you can see here the drawer stack is trying to draw on 5, which is a little bit too much for what I want. So I'm going to change this to 2. So that fits in nicely. And then you have your drawer depth settings here. At the moment, it's just top and bottom because there's only 2 of them. And I want these to take up as much room as they have available, which they're actually pretty close to at the moment anyway. But I'm just going to make it accurately do it. So I'm going to set these both to 0. And what that does is it tells, if you set any value to 0, what it actually does is rather than making it 0, it makes it just fit whatever room is left available. if you make both of them set to 0, they'll just take up exactly half each. So I'm going to set those both to 0. And then what was the other thing I used? Oh, open, which doesn't look like anything, but I'll show you it anyway. This is just, the function is none because it's just an empty space. So if we go back to modules now, you should be able to see that, yeah, it looks very similar to how it did before, but my drawer stack is definitely just 2 drawers. They're both taking up the same amount of size, and I've got my empty space and my drawer at the bottom. So this is how you work with modules. I did see someone mention in the questions before something about how you would put in an appliance or something like that. At the moment, we have a oven type module which you can put in. I can put it on here, it's not going to fit, but that's what it does. That's the only appliance we have at the moment. We have had some requests recently for a microwave, and we're going to be adding that in an update to the tool at some stage soon. But at the moment, it's just an oven. If you do have any other requests for different types of things that you would want to put in, not necessarily appliances, just anything else that you think we need to have available as a module type, that would be very helpful for us to know, because the ones that we have there, when we were making it, were the ones that we thought was everything that you would need, but the microwave is a very obvious choice to add in there. Obviously, to do a microwave, you could just fairly easily make it an open type like this one here and shove a microwave object in, but having one built in that you don't have to mess around, that sort of stuff with, makes a lot of sense. So we will be adding that in future, and the same with oven as well. So that's the modules. Now if I click OK and go back to my 3D, you can see that it has made those changes, and that's pretty much how I want it to work for now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a countertop on this cabinet. I'm just going to zoom out of it. And if I go back into my cabinets tool and have a look around in here, you can see at the very top is CI bench top, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just a bench top. So at the moment it's set to have a square nosing. There's a couple of different options there. I'm going to change it to round. I'll set the graphic editing to edit the shape, because I'm going to want to make it fit the size of my actual cabinet. And before we hit OK, I'm just going to go into the attributes and change the surfaces, because it's defaulted to black in this project, and that's not really what I want. No, that looks horrible, sorry. Let's make it marble. Hit OK, and then I'll just place it over here so that you can see what the default looks like. It just puts down a big rectangle. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it over to my cabinet and then trace the shape. So let's just drag it over and then use the nodes. Now these nodes work the same way that nodes in the fill tool do. So you just grab hold of the corners and move them to wherever you need them to be. That's matched the shape of my rectangle now. But there are also other controls, so you can make the make the lines curved if you want. So you can make a countertop that has a curve in it. That's probably fairly common for, say, a bathroom or something like that. You have offset edges and some addition and removal and that sort of thing. All of the things that you usually have in the slab or any other sort of fill shape in ArchiCAD. That's the way that this countertop works. So I've fit it to that shape. I'm going to change that back to straight, actually. And now, just before I go to 3D and make myself look silly, I'm going to move this bench top up off the floor. My cabinet was 860 high, so let's just sit it right on top. Jump into 3D, and we should have a bench top sitting on top. Yes, we do. So that's just with the default settings. It defaults to have nosing on the front and a splashback on the back. Once we select it, you can see there's a purple hotspot here, so we can actually change the height of this relatively easily if you need to do that sort of thing. And now that we have it drawn up, that looks pretty much how I wanted it to look in 3D. If I pop back to the 2D view, On the editing palette, one thing that you might have noticed while we were there is that there's actually a second set of things here, and this is the edge type. So I'm just going to change to edge type mode by moving that purple node down here. And you can see we've got a couple of options here, and that's going to let me set the type of edges that they are. So as you saw before, the front edge was a rounded nosing, and the back edge was a upstand. What we can do here is we can override those, and we can also apply different edges to different parts of it. So I might just go and do a nice waterfall on one side. So I'm just going to expand this out so that it goes outside the side of the cabinet. And then I'll come into the edge types. I'll choose the waterfall edge type, and I'll click on that edge. So that's made that a waterfall edge now. And that's all I want to do, actually. Yeah, that's all I want to do. Oh, maybe I'll make the other side an upstand as well, just so that looks nice and neat. And then I will turn my edit mode back off again, same way as we did in the cabinet tool, just by moving it up to there. And if I go back to 3D now, you should see, yeah, so we have an upstand on both the back and the side now. The front edge is still rounded, and the waterfall edge is dropping off the side here. Oops. And if you look down at the bottom, there's a purple hotspot right down there, so that you can adjust how long, or sorry, how far down the side the waterfall flows. So that should let you do whatever you want to do with the configuration of your countertop as well. But again, that's a thing that if there are different kinds of edges you would want, please do let us know about that, because having as many edges as you need available there is something that we want to be able to do. So if there's others that you can think of, please do send those through. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a sink into the top. So let's just go find a sink. I'm just going to use my object tool and just go find one. Yeah, this is the one that I used when I was looking at it before. This is just the sink in the default ArchiCAD library. We've got some taps on it. That's fine. You can use any object at all. It doesn't matter. I think we have a couple of CI tools ones in the essential library. You could grab one of those. Just go and put your sink in wherever you want it. That's a little bit too big. Make it about that size. See if that looks sensible in 3D. Yes, that looks about right. So now the only thing I need to do is actually cut the countertop out of the sink. So I'm going to use a solid element operation to do that. Probably a lot of you are familiar with solid element operations, but if you're not, the name of it sounds terrifying probably, but all it is basically cutting things out and joining things together. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell ArchiCAD that we want this sink here to cut itself out of this cabinet assembly here. So to do that, I'm going to select my sink, and I'm going to say that it is the operator, because it is the thing that I want to cut something else. So I press Add as Operator, and now I'm going to select my benchtop. I'm going to say Add as Target, and I'm also going to select my cabinet because I want to cut out the top of the cabinet structure there, which I didn't turn off. I wanted to cut the top out of that as well, so I'm going to add that as a target as well. That. Select both and go Add as Target. And now you can see I've got my targets loaded and my operators loaded, and you can ignore pretty much all the rest of this. The last thing that we care about is this Choose Operation option here. We want to tell it what we actually want it to do. Now a subtraction will just cut out the area of the sink, but because there's nothing inside the sink, it's not actually going to cut out the bit that's in the middle. So that's not what we want. We're going to choose the second option here, Subtraction with Upward Extrusion, and what that's going to do is it's going to cut the shape of the cabinet out, and then also kind of in your imagination just zoom the cabinet, the sink, straight up from where it is and cut out anything else that it interacts with on the way. So I'm going to do that option, and I'll hit Execute. And as soon as you do that, you'll see that the bench top from that area is now gone, and I've got a sink which actually goes down and looks like a sink. If you want to be really clever, you could also put a slab inside your sink and give it like a nice water texture or something like that to look like it has water in there, or anything like that. See if you can find a texture of some washing up and foamy water in there or something. But yeah, so that should cover off, I think, sort of most of the things that you would want to do just for making up your standard cabinets in kitchens and bathrooms and that sort of thing. I hope that gives you an idea of how the modules work and that sort of thing, and how the bench top works. Again, it's just a thing that a lot of people have been asking about recently, of just how do I make a normal looking cabinet? And so this was to cover that off. I'm just going to, we've gone for half an hour already. I'm just going to go and have a look at the questions now. And I think I might leave slab edges till next time, unless anybody really wants to see them right now. Let me know. Otherwise, I'll see if I can cover off some questions. All right, what have we got here? So we've got some suggestions for extra things that we can do. That's great. Yes, so how do you incorporate built-in appliances? As I was showing before, using the modules to do those. So at the moment, we just have the oven, and we're going to have the microwave eventually. But if there are any other sorts of things like that, the way to do them is that at the moment, the way to do them, if they are not the one that's built in already, which is just the oven, is to just add an empty module like this one is here and fit your appliance in that way. But as we add in extra things to be built in, you'll be able to just select that module and it'll put in whatever it is that you want in there. So there's not really much that you need to do beyond saying this module here should be an oven, and then you're done. Infill panels where the joinery sits against a wall as part of the joinery. So let's go. So one of the things that you can do, I myself am not a cabinet designer by any stretch, so I'm not 100% sure what you wanted to know there, but you can use some of the old objects to place just panels by themselves. Maybe I'll follow up with you later because I don't quite understand what that one is. Sorry. What else we got? Do the ovens show up in an appliance schedule? That's a very good question, and the answer is no, they won't. But we may be able to make them do that. I will find out about whether that's a possibility, and yeah, have that show up in probably schedule as if it were an object or something like that. Yeah, no, they don't do that at the moment, but we will see if we can add in something that will do that. We've got some people saying warming drawers would be a good module, integrated fridges will be a good module, and a pull-out pantry. Those are all great. So yeah, I will pencil all of those in as new features that we can add in. That will be very good. Oh, and a dishwasher. Yes, that's also a great suggestion. That's excellent. How to turn a corner on a countertop. You can do, because the way that you draw the bench top is essentially it's the sort of the freeform fill tool in ArchiCAD. You can make your bench top whatever shape you want it to be just by editing those nodes. So I can just come in here and I can, whoops, excuse me while I click the wrong things again. Do that, and then I'll offset this edge out to here. And that one. That's extremely poorly drawn on the fly, I'm afraid. But yeah, because you can just move those nodes around wherever you need them to, you can just bend and twist your cabinet into whatever shape you want. So yes, you can do a U-shaped bench top, whatever you need. And because these are all edges now, you can then use the edge tool to make all of these be nosings or something like that, or you make the whole thing upstands or whatever you want just by changing to the edge edit mode and applying those to them as well. Just by selecting that and then dropping it onto wherever you need it to be. I almost don't want to see it in 3D because that's going to look horrifying, but let's go have a look. Yeah, so that looks vile, obviously, but you can see the idea is it has made the shape that you wanted it to. The nosing is applied wherever you told it to, and you can override that as you go. And obviously, if you're using upstands, you can change the height. If you're using waterfalls, you can change the length, all that sort of thing. Yep. How can you use custom edge profiles? That is a good question. So yeah, under custom profile here, it's going to pick up, what do we call them? Complex profiles from ArchiCAD. It's going to pick up all of those. Obviously, a lot of them do not make sense to use, as you can see. Almost all of them, in fact, don't make sense to use. So probably the built-in ones, you won't really have reason to make use any of those, but it does mean that you could use the complex profile to draw up your own nosing shapes if there's any that don't do what you want them to, and use those instead. It is going to apply that nosing on everything that you set as a nosing, though I'm not sure if that's something that would be useful, would be to have a difference there. But at the moment, if you set this to chamfered, all of the edges are going to be chamfered. All of the edges that are nosings, sorry, are going to be chamfered, not just some of them. But yeah, I think that covers most cases. But if there are cases where you would want to have different nosing profiles, that might be something that we could do. If that is something that you want to, let us know. But at this stage, it's just the one. But yeah, that's what custom does. And so that will apply on anything that's set to this nosing type here. Recessed handled. I'm just going to get rid of that abomination of a bench top for now so we can look back at the cabinet. So at the moment, the handles, what do I get them set to? The handles, I didn't cover the rest of the module settings in here, but the front obviously set the way the front look, and the handle is set to the handles. These are all set to recessed by default, but you can make them whatever you want. If I jump out to the full list, you can see recessed is here, but we've also got a couple of others. And you can customize these however you want as well. So this one is using the shape recessed, but these are the shapes that are available. So we've got most of the things that I think you'd expect to see. The recess is the default one. Well, at least it's the default one in our default template. Yours might be slightly different if you've changed something. Fingerpull doesn't show a display for it because it's just the absence of an area, so you can't see it at this stage. But if you apply that, it'll just cut the chunk out to make it a fingerpull in there. And they also have a custom knob option there as well, which is you may have seen this yourself if you messed around with making your own objects at all. But one of the things that you can do when you save an element as an object is that there is an option to save it as, here we go, as a knob here. I think either knob or handle will work actually. So if you make your own shaped handle or something, you can save it using this control here, and then go into your cabinet tool and set that module's handle to custom. And then when you click on the flyout menu here, it will show any handle or knob elements that you have loaded in this project's library under there. So the ones that you created, or if you grab some from other people or something like that, those will all show there. I don't have any in this project, but if you do want to make your own, you can do that. And the same applies to fronts as well. So the available set of fronts, the fronts that we have by default are just flat, raised, glass, TNG, and louvers. But we can also do a custom cabinet door as well. So if you have a kind of a wacky shape that you want to do that isn't covered by arch top, wavy top, or rectangular, basically, then you can make that up as well. Save it as a custom cabinet door object, and that will become available here as well. So you can make that customized also if you want to. All right, I think that covers off most of them. I will get back to person asking about the panels later. But thank you very much for attending, everyone. As I said before, I will be uploading the recording probably early next week to my CI, so that you can watch this again later, or you can send it to unfortunate relatives who you want to share it with, or anyone who you're currently quarantining with, or send to other people who work with you and want to know how to do cabinets and stuff. Hopefully that first half hour or so will be useful to most people. It's just a sort of a, here's how you draw a basic cabinet. But yeah, if you do have any other questions, send them through to the support desk, nz.support@centralinnovation.com, and those will make their way through to me, and I can add them to our new features suggestion list. And also, if you do have any suggestions for other things to cover in these webinars, send those through there as well. That would be very helpful. Thanks very much.